Nestled in the heart of America's Great Plains are contrasting tastes of a sacred land that beckons the visitor. Beckons the visitor to enter the nation's mysterious, inglorious West. A land of soaring pinnacles, deep canyons, hidden caves. A place of national monuments, wildlife sanctuaries, the place of the inglorious death of famed gunslinger Wild Bill Hickok. And the most sacred spot for the Lakota Sioux.
You know, it's where our ancestors were, all our ceremonies were performed, you know, it's really important. And with the Black Hills, it's pretty much our creation stories. That's where we came out of, you know. When we first seen daylight, we came out of Wind Cave.
Of this land, Western historian Watson Parker wrote, "The dream of wonders yet untapped, of riches far beyond the rainbow's end, of a great new land of hope and glory, far out beyond the last frontier." These contrasting tastes of the West, one soaring rich in forests and water, the other barren and deeply eroded, are brought together by a shared geology and history. They are the gateway to the great American West. They are the Black Hills and the Badlands. After traveling across miles of dull and featureless plains, suddenly the earth is wrenched open into one of the most striking landscapes on the planet. Of it, an early visitor wrote, "It is as if it were the devil's own bit of the planet, and yet stabbed and slashed with some great knife, until all fertility drained away from yawning wounds." Legendary cavalry officer Colonel George Armstrong Custer called it hell with the fires burnt out. The great American author John Steinbeck said it was like the work of an evil child. A sense comes from it that it does not like or welcome humans. These early writers got it wrong. The grace and majesty of God's creation surround you here. This incredible landscape of Makosika, the Badlands, is a cosmic geologic wonder where erosion has carved the landscape into spectacular canyons and sawtooth ridges.
The Badlands is a place of constant change. You can come out one day, you can come out in the morning, you can come out the next day, you can come out in the evening, and you're gonna notice something different. You're gonna see something in a different light, or you're gonna see an animal that wasn't there before, or you're gonna have a different experience every time.
Wildlife abounds here amid the barren, towering, multi-hued crags, cliffs, and bluffs of sedimentary rock. For the Sioux, it was and still is a place of refuge, a place of profound meaning.
It means a whole lot, you know. Not only is it beautiful, it's where my people came from. It's where my history is, my culture. It's pretty much my whole life, you know. I really don't plan on moving or relocating or anything because everything I have, own, or would ever want is right here where my people roam.
To the west, one can see the dark outline of a mountain range. The Black Hills, Pahasapa, the sacred center of the world, a place where God's energy is palpable. The first white men to explore the area considered it majestic, mysterious, and unknown. Trappers reported hearing strange booming and banging noises, like the roar of cannons, a mystery never explained. Gabriel Means is a member of the Lakota Sioux who lives in the Badlands and travels to the Black Hills. He knows the Thunder Beings well.
In the Black Hills, I go up there every spring to welcome back the Wakians, or the thunder beings, and they're pretty much the ones who give life to the earth, you know, as that booming noise that wakes up all the frogs, the crickets, the fish, the burrowing animals mostly, and every spring we go up there to pray to them, you know, for giving us life for the new year.
From the air, the Black Hills thrust their tree-covered granite core peaks skyward. Each day brings a contrast in light and splendor. Carved into those granite summits are Mount Rushmore's 4 presidents and Thunderhead Mountain's Sioux warrior, Crazy Horse. And then there are the parks, the flat open spaces between the spires, refuges, sanctuaries, places where one can almost reach out and touch a buffalo, or watch the American antelope, the pronghorn. These 2 animals harken back to days when the tall and short grass prairies dominated the landscape. A landscape rich in its own subtle beauty. But there's more. The Black Hills is perfect for the formation of one of nature's grand wonders.
In the Black Hills, there's over 200 caves, so this set of circumstances is quite common in the Black Hills. There's lots of caves here.
Nowhere else are the hidden mysteries and radiant beauty of caves so readily available as in the Black Hills. The dichotomy of the Black Hills and the Badlands often lead to surreal experiences of God. A God the Lakota say is in our midst. Driving from the east, the visitor first encounters the Badlands. In approximately 50 miles, the Black Hills rise up. 400 miles further west are the Rocky Mountains. Mountains whose geology directly ties to the Black Hills. There is probably no other region 100 miles long and 50 miles wide in the world that contains such a wealth of geological features and interest as the Black Hills. Resting on the western border of present-day South Dakota, the name Black Hills is really a misnomer. Hills they are not. Indeed, the whole area holds the same harsh ruggedness associated with the Rocky Mountains to the west. The average elevation of the surrounding plains is around 3,000 feet. Then dramatically, the tallest granite peaks of the Black Hills rise up to over 7,000 feet. And many other peaks reach 6,500 feet. To understand the forces that shaped the Black Hills and the Badlands to the east, you have to go back in time to the last age of the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago.
The most accepted geologic theory for how the Black Hills formed is that this is the easternmost extent of the Rocky Mountains. It's the same mountain building processes that form the Rocky Mountains. Roughly 60 million years ago, there was an uplift. Geologists don't agree on what caused the uplift, but there was the granite core that pushed up through the underlying layers of sedimentary rock. That core is now the Harney Range, and that formed the uplift that is the Black Hills. And all around then is the plains. They call the Black Hills the island in the plains because it is just this fairly small area of mountain uplift surrounded by prairie.
Interestingly, the same Rocky Mountain uplift that produced the Black Hills also created its many caves.
Well, one of the layers that was cracked and fractured by the uplift of the granite, the central core of the Black Hills, was a layer of limestone. In this area we call the limestone the Pahasapa limestone. That's the Lakota word for hills black, and that's how the Black Hills got their name. This layer of limestone, the Pahasapa limestone, cracked and fractured with the uplift of the Black Hills. That allowed rainwater and groundwater to seep into the cracks and fractures and formed the cavities and passages that are now the cave passages that we see as Jewel Cave today.
From there, the cave building process began in the Black Hills, including its premier cave, Jewel Cave.
The way I break down the process of how the cave formed is into some basic ingredients. You have the right kind of rock. You have limestone. Most of the world's caves are in limestone. Limestone has a property of dissolving in slightly acidic water. It doesn't have to be very acidic. Just carbon dioxide that's added to water as it's seeping through the soil will form carbonic acid and will dissolve limestone. So you have the right kind of rock. That rock cracked and fractured with the uplift of the Black Hills. Then when that acidic water got into those cracks and fractures, it had time to dissolve. And then the fourth ingredient is a lot of time. Most geologists agree that this cave started to form probably 50 to 55 million years ago.
Jewel Cave beckons, invites the visitor into the unknown. Jewel Cave is the most complex and perhaps the longest cave in the world. It is a labyrinth of underground catacombs, estimated to stretch an astounding 5,000 miles beneath the earth. Even the average tourist is an explorer in this cave, able to spot a shape, a color, a formation never seen before. It is a seemingly endless network of narrow passageways leading to one spectacular chamber after another. Jewel Cave has it all, every kind of cave formation. Stalactites, stalagmites, the colorful bacon drapery, slender soda straws, reflecting pools of water, boxworks, fractures in the limestone, cave onyx, dripstones, spectacular giant draperies, and what Jewel Cave is best known for, its crystal-lined walls. At the same time, geologic forces were shaping the Black Hills pinnacles and caves. These forces were also shaping the Badlands in a different yet equally spectacular way. Japheth Boyce is a paleontologist who has spent a lifetime studying the forces that fashioned the Badlands and its fossil-rich White River Formation.
We're in the South Dakota, in the Black Hills and in the South Dakota Badlands.
The South Dakota White River Badlands are just beautiful, beautiful badlands. And they're interesting badlands because they're very rapid depositions. How they were laid down is we have several layers of time here. We have the Cretaceous, where T-Rex lived here. We have the Paleocene, the Eocene, and then we have the Oligocene, which is the White River Badlands. Now, the Black Hills were being pushed up at the same time that the Paleocene and the Eocene were occurring. And so they got washed away. And what we have now is the Oligocene is sitting right on top of the Cretaceous. And the Oligocene is when mammals really started to bloom. We started to get big diversities. They became very interesting mammals. They weren't some slugs just barely moving around. They were exciting animals, big, big rhinos, aggressive tigers. And that occurred during the Oligocene. And where a lot of the deposit from the Oligocene comes from is west of the Black Hills, from volcanic ash drifting in and settling down. We also have rapid erosion from the Black Hills pushing up, and those Black Hills were pushed up, and all the sediment and soil that was there was being pushed and flooded out to cover the Badlands. And the Badlands look like one continuous layer, or maybe just a few layers in there. But if you look very closely, if you cut into some of those Badlands buttes, you'll see many, many layers. And the sediment that was coming down was rapid, but it is seasonal, and we can see different years occurring.
The Badlands is still eroding today. Eroding at a rate of about 1 inch per year. It is an erosion that continues to expose one of the nation's greatest fossil treasures. Large fossil mammals that lived 30 million years ago. Large fossil mammals that are found as isolated individuals or in mass graves known as mortality bone beds.
The White River Badlands looked like modern-day Africa, with broad plains, lots of different animals. But when I think of Africa, I think of rhinoceros. And this is a fossil rhinoceros from the White River Badlands. If you look closely, you'll notice the first thing that's not looking like a rhinoceros is there's no horn. There's not even a base for a horn to grow out of. This was a hornless rhinoceros, about the size of one of those Clydesdales that you see on TV. And it ran in herds across the White River Badlands. It was very fleet-footed. It wasn't the lumbering animal that we think of the modern rhino. And this rhino ran freely on the plains, and it had to run because there were lots of predators around. We'll talk about the predators in a minute. All kinds of other animals lived in the Badlands. When you think of modern Africa, you think of camels, and this is a camel skull. Small, isn't it? About the size of an Irish setter. This is an ancestor to a camel, so they started out small and got larger. This is a very cute little camel skull, and the camels were very tasty items, or they must have been tasty, because I find many of them that have been eaten by the predators. And this one has a bite mark in the top of its head from a saber-toothed cat. Other animals that ran around Africa today are the zebras. And in the fossil times, we had fossil horses as well. This is a fossil horse. It's called Mesohippus. It was a three-toed horse. And we can look at the three toes on this Mesohippus. Here's one of his feet. Here's his ankle. Here's his shin bone broken off. Here's the foot extending down to the three toes. Very fleet-footed little guy. And you had to be fleet-footed. You had to be fast. You had to be able to get away from the predators, because the predators were just as fast. We have other animals as well. Some animals a little slower. This is called an oreodont. It was the most common animal in the Badlands. It's common to find these. It's common for two reasons. One, there were a lot of them in the fossil times. Second reason is they lived in burrows, like modern-day prairie dogs. They lived in colonies, family colonies. When we find these, we find them in burrows, and we find groups of burrows together. So they were preserved well. There were a lot of them. They died in a convenient spot, so we find many of them. Another burrowing animal, you don't think of it as a burrowing animal, is a tortoise. This is a tortoise from the White River Badlands. It's related to the modern-day gopher tortoise that lives in Florida today. There were a lot of these, and some of them grew to be huge. Some of them grew to be 3 feet across. This is a young one. So we've got mammals, we've got reptiles, and we've got birds. These are fossil eggs from an aquatic bird, something like a duck or a goose. We don't find many skeletons of the aquatic birds, but we do find the eggs. And we find them in groups, so we knew that they were nesting, making clutches of eggs. They weren't just laying single eggs. So we've got a pretty good idea of what modern day Africa is like, and we have a pretty good idea of what the White River Badlands were like. We've got rhinos, we have zebras or mesohippus, the three-toed horse, we have camels, we have the oreodont, which is related to the sheep and the goats, we have tortoises, and we have birds, maybe like a duck or a goose. We also have fossil warthogs. This is a fossil warthog, and this is still in the rock as it was discovered. Here's the skull, there's the eye. This is the lower jaw that slipped out from underneath the skull and is now sitting in front of the skull. The fossil warthog lived like the oreodont and like the tortoise. They built burrows. They went into the burrows and lived underground. So we find a lot of the warthogs, we find a lot of the oreodonts, we find a lot of the tortoises. Now these guys were being chased and eaten by a variety of animals. This is one. This is a saber-toothed cat. It's called Hoplophonius. It's quite small compared to the La Brea tar pit cats. You're used to seeing the giant sabers and the giant skulls from the La Brea tar pits. However, this is the ancestor to them. They started out small like the zebras and like the camels. This one was killed by another saber-toothed tiger, and we can see the scar in the top of its head here where the cranium was caved in by a bite from another predator, probably a saber-toothed tiger. So we've got cats. Now we need dogs. This is a dog, not a true dog, but very similar to the modern day dogs. This is called the Phoenix, about the size of a coyote, and it was built much like a modern day coyote. Pretty fleet-footed, had to be fast in order to catch these guys to live. Now the biggest and baddest predator in the Badlands was the hyenodon. The hyenodon was terribly fierce. It didn't just live in the White River Badlands, it lived around the world from the time of the dinosaurs up to the Ice Age. And in each one of these environments where it lived, it was the king. It was the top predator. And this is a hyenodon here. It's a large, large skull. It's almost as big as an African lion skull. Just a huge animal. And it had powerful jaws. This big crest that you see here, these two crests, that's where the muscles to attach to that make the jaws strong. They had big crests with big muscles making a big, strong bite. This guy was fierce. And if you weren't fast, you were dead. The hyenodon we just saw was an old grandpa hyenodon, an old gummer, big old guy that had lived and seen a lot of things. This is a subadult, a juvenile, a younger version of that giant skull that we saw. The wonderful thing about the fossil record is that we get to see things exactly in a stop-action sequence. If you look out the window and took a photograph, that's what you're seeing in the fossil record. We've stopped life. We've stopped action. We have stopped time. And this guy was a juvenile, and he stopped dead in his tracks and was buried. And we found him in the White River Badlands. Now we know he's a juvenile for a number of reasons. One of them is the bones in the cranium aren't completely fused together, but the main reason is he has baby teeth and he has adult teeth both. If you look closely here, you'll see the adult teeth poking up through the jaws. These caramel-colored teeth are baby teeth. The dark-colored teeth are adult teeth. Now, he's got his canines in, That makes him older than 12 years old if he was a human. But he doesn't have all his premolars, and he doesn't have all his molars in. So he's somewhere over 6 years old, but he's not 18 years old yet. He's in grade school or junior high. And that little guy was as fierce as his grandpa, the old gummer hyenodon. The scariest thing or best thing for the hyenodon to feed upon, and the saber-toothed tigers, was Titanothere or Brontothere. Brontothere is Greek. It means thunder beast, and it was a thundering beast. They were bigger than the modern-day rhinos. Funny looking things, because this rhino has two horns that are side by side like a slingshot, and that makes them a little different looking than our modern-day rhino. But they acted much like the modern-day rhino. A little larger, but acted the same way. Huge, huge animals. These big horns, big skulls, and big meat. So if you're a predator, you want to catch something like this because you can eat for a long, long time on one of these.
If you find one of these fossils in the park, like this orodont skull, mark it and report it to a park ranger. If the Black Hills Badlands ecosystem was once a warm, temperate grassland, today we find a much drier and more diverse group of ecosystems. The Black Hills is dominated by the ponderosa pine ecosystem, and the Badlands by mixed grass prairie. At one time, the North American prairie stretched from the Rocky Mountains on the west to Ohio in the east, and from Canada's central provinces in the north to the Texas border with Mexico. An endless sea of grass as far as the eye could see. The grasslands in the east were dominated by the tall grass big blue stem, a grass that in the summer reaches heights of over 6 feet. But the tall grass prairie has all but disappeared, plowed under to become the breadbasket of the nation. The westernmost and driest part of the North American grasslands is occupied by the short grass prairie. This grass grows barely 12 inches above the ground. Here the region receives less than 10 to 12 inches of precipitation a year. Soils are lighter as opposed to the deep, rich soils of the tall grass prairie. And today these old prairies are used as rangeland for grazing cattle. In between is a mixed grass prairie, a prairie ecosystem drawing on a mixture of plants from the other two prairie biomes.
The ecosystem here is a mixed grass prairie ecosystem with grass species. You'll find grass species here from short grass and tall grass prairies mixed together, about a medium height as far as length or height of the grasses. Typical grasses that you'll find in mixed grass prairie are western wheatgrass, buffalo grass, grandma grass. Big blue stem and little blue stem are found within the mixed grass prairie. There's a lot of wildflowers that you can see in the Badlands. You just have to be at the right time. A lot of people notice the bright yellow flower of the prickly pear cactus through most of the summer.
It was on these prairies that the American bison, commonly known as the American buffalo, once roamed in massive herds numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Then these magnificent animals were hunted almost to extinction. By the late 19th century, millions had been reduced to a few hundred individuals. Gradually, through the efforts of conservationists, the buffalo has been brought back from the brink and reintroduced in the 1960s. A small herd of bison can be viewed in the Badlands National Park, and an even larger herd in the Black Hills Custer State Park. It is a place where one can watch young calves romp and play. And where you can almost reach out and touch one of these shaggy 2,500-pound symbols of the American prairie. But the keystone species of the prairie is not a large one. In fact, it is quite small.
Prairie dogs are what's known as a keystone species. They create habitat and they're a food source for many other prairie animals. So they're considered essential to the prairie ecosystem and health of the prairie. They're a social rodent. They'll dig underground burrows and live together in small family groups, and so you'll see what's known as prairie dog towns with these critters living in them.
These ecosystem engineers once ranged as widely as the American bison. Known by their distinctive black tails, the black-tailed prairie dogs live in colonies that can vary from 5 to thousands of individuals. Males rise up, chirping to proclaim their dominance over a section of the colony called a ward. The mounds around each hole are designed as fortification from flooding. Each year, a prairie dog family produces an average litter of 5 pups. But the Badlands and the open meadows in the Black Hills provide ample opportunity for observing these engaging little rodents. More elusive is the pronghorn, what is known as the American antelope. First-time observers of the pronghorn are often shocked into thinking that they have been magically transported to the African savanna. This cautious animal is the fastest runner among all North American animals, reaching speeds of over 40 miles an hour. Unlike deer, it has 2 asymmetrical horns. Simple horns that are shed each year, one ending in a short prong, and the other in a curved hook. It is a unique animal with no close relatives. Males can be found in bachelor herds, while females and young gather in groups dominated by a single large male. With luck, the visitor will spot a pronghorn herd either in the Black Hills open areas or in the grassy areas of the Badlands. One of the most striking sights in the Badlands are bighorn sheep. Once common in both the Black Hills and the Badlands of South Dakota, uncontrolled hunting brought about their extinction by 1916. Then in the 60s, bighorn sheep from Wyoming were transplanted into Custer State Park, and others from Colorado were transplanted into the Badlands National Park. Today, there are approximately 300 to 350 bighorn sheep in these herds. Social animals, bighorns separate themselves into two groups. One group consists of mature rams or males, while the other group consists of ewes, females, lambs, and young males. Lambs, one per ewe, are born in late May or early June. Young males will eventually break from the female groups at 2 or 3 years of age and join the ram bands. These bands are governed by a social hierarchy based on body and, of course, horn size. Their normal lifespan is 10 to 12 years. Other large animals in the area are 2 species of deer. The mule deer, with its black tail and large ears, and the swift, elusive white-tailed deer. And of course, there is the ever-present western meadowlark, commanding attention through its familiar song, the song of the prairie. A prairie and open woodland where turkeys now freely roam. At the time of colonial settlement, wild turkeys were widespread east of the Rocky Mountains. As settlement progressed, their habitat disappeared, and the number of wild turkeys began to shrink. Indeed, this strikingly handsome bird with its blackish-brown tail feathers, bluish-gray to red head, and weighing up to 24 pounds, almost vanished completely. But in the 1970s, restoration programs brought these icons of Americana back to healthy numbers. Living in flocks organized by a pecking order, it's a grand sight to see them cruising the Badlands or feeding in the meadows of the Black Hills. The open meadows of the Black Hills make up only a small part of the Black Hills ecosystem. Most of it is ponderosa pine forest.
The ecosystem of this area is ponderosa pine forest. The predominant tree species is ponderosa pine. You find some other tree species down in the canyon bottoms, but this is very much a dry, semi-arid forest of ponderosa pine. A lot of large wildlife species. There are elk here. There are both white-tailed deer and mule deer. Also turkey, lots of turkey, and mountain lion. This is also within the range of the mountain lion here in the Black Hills.
One feature hard to miss in the Black Hills are all the burned trees.
The fire had a big impact. The fire that people will see if they come here is a fire that was in August of 2000. It burned almost 84,000 acres. It was called the Jasper Fire. So the fire has had several impacts. One, it's opened up a lot of meadow type areas. Elk population has increased in the monument because of the proliferation of grass species. We're seeing birds that depend on large dead trees. There are very few areas in the Black Hills that have large dead trees because of the logging that occurs here. Most of the Black Hills is national forest, which has logging on it.
Logging is just a small part of the colorful and significant American history of the Black Hills. Archaeological evidence in the hills indicates that they were probably used primarily for hunting camps by the early Paleo and Archaic Indians. That all changed in the 17th century. With the arrival of horses brought by the Spanish from Europe, a whole new relationship began between the Black Hills and Plains Indians. In particular, the Sioux. The Plains Indians were a nomadic horse culture, living off the vast herds of buffalo. Herds that surrounded the Black Hills. Soon, the Black Hills would become a holy place for the Cheyenne and Lakota. By 1776, the same year America declared its independence from Britain, the Lakota controlled the Black Hills. For them, the hills were a place of sacred rituals, a place of sanctuary. For the next 100 years, Americans ignored the Badlands and the Black Hills as they spread westward across the continent. The stark and forbidding land offered little to homesteaders eager for a rich and bountiful life in the greener pastures of Oregon, Washington, and California. Then in 1874, this disinterest changed when Colonel George Armstrong Custer's Black Hills expedition discovered gold at French Creek in the heart of the Sioux Sacred Hills. Though the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie had confirmed the Lakota's ownership of the Black Hills, news of gold gripped fortune seekers. Ignoring the protests of the Sioux, the U.S. cavalry turned a blind eye as miners rushed in. A fierce battle for the northern plains quickly followed, punctuated by Custer's famous defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. On June 25, 1876, George Armstrong Custer, along with 212 men of the 7th Cavalry, were massacred when they charged the Sioux encampment of 1,500 warriors at Little Bighorn in southeastern Montana. In the era of the Indian Wars, it was the worst defeat suffered by the U.S. cavalry and the greatest victory for the Sioux and Cheyenne. However, that victory was short-lived. It was only a matter of time before the Plains Indians fell to the superior numbers and weaponry of the U.S. cavalry. It all came to an end on December 30th, 1890. Here, in the southern unit of Badlands National Park, at the Battle of Wounded Knee. In the last days of December 1890, Sioux War Chief Bigfoot and around 300 of his followers were returning to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation near the Badlands when they were surrounded by elements of the 7th Cavalry. While negotiating for disarmament of the Indians, a shot was fired. The cavalry opened up with artillery and rifles, and very quickly, over 300 Indians, mostly women and children, were dead. In those few short moments, the Indian wars were forever over. In between those two great Indian battles, the Black Hills became the last frontier for America's romantic, wild, wild West. Following Custer's discovery, the country's last great gold rush began. Thousands of miners swept into the Black Hills. Mining towns sprang up on every creek, in every valley. The Black Hills became the last lawless frontier in America. The epitome of these mining towns was Deadwood. It was a fierce, rip-roaring boom town without rules, known for its violence as well as its wealth. Miners struck it rich in the morning and lost their claims in gambling halls by evening. It is also home to the best-known murder in American Western history, the death of Wild Bill Hickok. If ever there was a life fully lived in the Old West, it was the life lived by Wild Bill Hickok. He tasted everything the West had to offer and died with his boots on in the same year that his close friend and fellow Western legend, George Armstrong Custer, met his fate. Born in Illinois, by the age of 18, he became a gunfighter and soon became one of the West's most celebrated lawmen. Then in 1871, Hickok became marshal of one of the early cow towns, Abilene, Kansas. In a sense, this was the beginning of the end for Wild Bill.
Wild Bill was involved with the killing of Phil Coe in Abilene. This was a man who was up on a cattle drive and was, for some reason, in the late summer, early fall, he let go with a couple of rounds in downtown Abilene, and of course Wild Bill heard this. He was there to enforce the law, and he came out and confronted Coe about this, and pretty soon things got out of hand. Coe pulled a revolver on Wild Bill, and Wild Bill shot him dead. In the meantime, Wild Bill's deputy came out from one of the saloons, everything, hearing this go on, and Wild Bill just saw a flash of somebody off to the side with a revolver, and he turned and fired, and he actually killed his own deputy. This was pretty much the end of Wild Bill's lawman career, because that really bothered him, you know, that he had killed his own deputy. And of course after that he was a wanted man by all the outlaws.
For the rest of his life, Bill Hickok was unable to live the bigger-than-life reputation created for him by the Eastern press. With his stunning 6'3" frame and long curly hair, he could go nowhere without being noticed. For a time, he joined his friend Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show. But in the end, Hickok was drawn back to the lawless frontier, where he felt most comfortable. And it was here at the gambling tables that he could satisfy the need that became his Achilles heel, his addiction to gambling. In 1876, Wild Bill headed for the Black Hills of South Dakota.
In the spring of 1876, he married, on March 5th, Agnes Lake Thatcher. She had been a patron of Wild Bill's, and again, Wild Bill was really down on his luck. He really wasn't making an income to support his lifestyle, and probably married this woman who was well off. She ran a circus, and then he, after they married in Cheyenne, then he took her back to Cincinnati, Ohio. He told her that he was going to head to the Black Hills to stake a claim to produce a living. So he heads back west, picks up in Cheyenne his good friend Colorado Charlie Utter. They arrived in Deadwood around mid-July, maybe the 12th or 13th of 1876. And Wild Bill, they did set up camp near Main Street, and Wild Bill did go and prospect in the creek beds a little bit, but he spent most of his time playing poker, gambling in the establishments in Deadwood. So he was here less than a month when on August the 1st he went into the number 10 saloon and gets involved in a poker game with Bill Sutherland, who was also called Jack McCall. Now Wild Bill was successful in beating Jack McCall. In fact, Jack McCall had no money, and Wild Bill felt sorry for him and gave him some money to go buy breakfast. The next day, around noon, Wild Bill returns to the number 10 saloon and sits down. Legend has it that Wild Bill always liked to sit with his back to the wall. Well, in the number 10 saloon, the front door would have been facing him, but the back door would have been behind him. He asked Charlie Rich if he would switch chairs with him, and Charlie Rich, who was one of the other gamblers, declined. They were engaged in playing a hand of cards, and Jack McCall comes in through the back door, and Wild Bill doesn't notice him. At that time, Captain Massey had just beat Wild Bill's hand. Captain Massey had 4 7s, and Wild Bill had a king full house. And Wild Bill asked Sam Young, the bartender, to get him $15 more of chips. And at that same time, Wild Bill said to Captain Massey, "You old duffer, you beat me on the hand." And then bang, Jack McCall shoots him in the back of the head. Take that. And Wild Bill drops dead.
So at the age of 39, the greatest icon of the Old West was dead. The greatest gunfighter, the one who killed more men than any other lawman, the loner, the kind and compassionate man of justice was dead. And in many ways, so was the old Western frontier. The next frontier for the Black Hills and the Badlands would be conservation and tourism. The new frontier began with Teddy Roosevelt, the first of many presidents who loved the Black Hills. In 1903, he created Wind Cave as the nation's 8th national park and the first one created to protect a cave. In 1933, the Park Service assumed management of a second cave, Jewel Cave, this time with monument status. In the 1920s, the state of South Dakota began an effort to create a natural wildlife park, Custer State Park. Since then, it has continually grown until it has become the second largest state park in the nation. Its world-famous wildlife loop takes you through the park's herd of 1,500 free-roaming bison and the tourist-friendly feral burros, or wild donkeys, are sure to delight. Nearby are 2 of the nation's most revered attractions. Carved into the granite face of a mountain the Lakota called the Six Grandfathers near Keystone, South Dakota, is the greatest sculpture in America, Mount Rushmore. It honors 4 of America's greatest presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Construction began in 1927 by Gutzon Borglum and his son Lincoln Borglum, and was completed in 1941. Mount Rushmore's 60-foot tall sculptures are memorialized in Alfred Hitchcock's famous thriller, North by Northwest. Just 17 miles from Rushmore stands the enormous unfinished sculpture of the Sioux warrior Crazy Horse. Riding a horse and pointing into the distance. Begun in 1948, when completed, the monument will tower over Mount Rushmore, standing nearly 2 football fields tall and over 2 football fields wide. It will be the largest sculpture ever made. Conservation came to the Badlands with the establishment of Badlands National Monument in 1939. 31 years later, it gained full park status. This was followed in the 90s with the addition of a southern unit managed jointly by the Park Service and the Sioux Nation. There are many ways for the visitor to enjoy this glorious gateway to the Old West. The easiest is to drive one of the park's many winding roadways, stopping to observe wildlife. enter one of the park's frequent pull-offs to take in colorful scenery. Particularly in the Badlands, there are easy boardwalks and loop trails that take you up close and personal with its stunning rock formations. For the more adventurous, there are horseback rides or rugged climbs.
Well, right now we're in the elevator going down 23 stories. Once the door opens up, it's going to be 49 degrees Fahrenheit with 98% humidity.
And of course, there are the numerous public and private caves to explore. One of the most dramatic ways to see the parks is by air. Balloon rides over the Black Hills, or helicopter journeys above the Badlands. No matter how you experience this area, it is important to remember, this is sacred land.
The beauty is probably the key thing about it, but just for them to remember that this is also, it's a place of history, you know? A lot of stuff went down around here, and it means a lot to us Lakotas if you didn't like trash it or anything like that.